Right. So, good day, everybody, in absentia. Welcome to the this meeting that is being hosted. I'd say it's being hosted by the City of Toronto representative, Kim, and it's a talk on sustainability, but more especially the City of Toronto's Transform TO strategy and how that can fit into all the various activities that we have going on at Willowdale. So I would first of all want to uh, uh, acknowledge and be grateful for Kim and her enthusiasm and her availability today for this very meeting. So she comes to us from the Office of Environment and Climate. Just a moment. Environment and Climate. Did I leave anything?
And Forestry,
In forestry, yes, yes,
a
yes,
new addition.
yes. So yeah, she's going to be explaining and sharing with us, but somewhat of a brief view because there's a whole lot of information that we can get from the city website. But it's an honor that we have someone today who has made space and time for us in particular. So I'm Rugari. We made introductions. I am Rugari, and I am the Public Affairs and Religious Liberty Director. I volunteer as the director for that at Willowdale. And again, it's my own as well to be part of this meeting. So without further ado, I will ask Kim to blow us away.
Thank you, Rigari. Are you able to see there we go, my slideshow.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Um, as Rigari said, my name is Kim Stemshorn, and I am a senior environmental planner with the Environment, Climate, and Forestry Division. We get called ECD, ECF from time to time, or ECNF, but we are responsible for authoring the Transform TO Net Zero strategy. And with this presentation, I'll go over the net zero strategy, what's in it, what informs it, as well as opportunities to get involved. That's sort of our call of action to you, the community of Toronto. So thanks so much for having me. So what does climate change look like? I find in chatting with the residents of Toronto, there is a bit of a disconnect as to what climate change could look like, but we live through it all the time. Very simply put, it's the weather. And I'm going to show you some drastic, real pictures that we've experienced of weather and conditions we've experienced over the last 10 years or so. So this is a picture from Toronto Island looking at the city at the downtown core, and you can see it's completely flooded. This is from 2017. So we're seeing lots more water, heavy rainfalls resulting in amounts of water we can't manage or we struggle to manage or keep up with. Here's another picture from last year. The DVP flooded quite a few times, I think 3 times last year. And it means that our trips are going to be, our commutes, whether you're on bike or in a vehicle, are going to be disrupted. And it's very costly to fix these issues that we're seeing, large rainfalls. We're seeing hotter days. My colleagues like to say hotter, wetter, and wilder weather. A little bit of a tongue twister for you, but we are seeing hotter weather, and not all apartment buildings or houses have air conditioning in it or can be added at an affordable way. I know lots of rental apartments don't permit window air conditioners, but it means that Torontonians are just having to live in these very hot conditions in buildings that weren't actually made for it. So we'll go over this a bit more, but lots more hotter weather. Smog weather advisories. You might remember 2 summers ago, there were advisories in the summer months because of the bad air quality. And this was a result of forest fires that were in Quebec in another province from us, and the winds bring them in, and we are asked to stay indoors, or recommended strongly to stay indoors. So this is something you can check all the time, but it was particularly bad that summer 2 years ago, and I remember not being able to play softball myself. But these are things that we do experience quite regularly, and even in this winter, we saw extreme snowfalls where last year you didn't even need a shovel. So it's very volatile weather that's not very consistent or easy to predict. So as I mentioned a few slides ago, we're seeing hotter days. So these are some projections we have based on some modeling we've done, but we are going to see, in the 20, 40, 50 range down the road, temperatures above 44 degrees Celsius. That's extremely hot. And those who don't have air conditioning, as I mentioned before, are going to be forced to find cooler places that are outside of their homes. And we see this already with cooling centers that tend to be like libraries, malls, rec centers, or just arenas that we open up for the community to use and to stay cool in if their homes don't offer that. We're going to see significantly more rain, and it won't be over an entire summer. It'll be over, a few very intense rainfalls that may result in flooding, and probably will result in flooding. So this necessitates what we're talking about in the Transform TO Net Zero strategy. So just some history for you. The Transform TO Net Zero strategy was adopted by Council in December 2021. And prior to that, we had the Transform TO strategy that was approved in 2017. It was made, we declared a climate emergency, which necessitated this early 2040 more aggressive plan to tackle this in a more short-term basis. So we base it on a 1990 measure. So that's where we get all our measurements from. And I'll show you some projections in some later slides, but you can read up on this strategy if you want more information, but my presentation should give you sort of the basic understanding. So I'm going to say the words net zero emissions a fair bit in this presentation, and it's achieved. Net zero emissions is achieved when we stop emitting greenhouse gas emissions, or GHGs, in our daily lives. And our goal of net zero is to get as close as we can to zero, to minimize our impact on the environment we live and enjoy. So my team, we're called the Net Zero team. We're within the policy and research team of the Environment, Climate, and Forestry Division. We're working on the Net Zero Strategy Action Plan, and it's a 5-year action plan for the next five years, taking us to 2030. As a part of this strategy action plan, we're developing a series of actions, a list of actions that they'll be quite simple in nature and measurable. We have a previous action plan that was 2022 or 2021 to 2025, 2022 to 2025, and there were 30 actions in there, and that's sort of to guide us in the short term to the overarching 2040 goal. So I think what's relevant to residents that want to stay informed and involved and engaged is to know that this action plan is going to the Infrastructure and Environment Committee on June 11th of this year. And then once it passes through that committee, it'll go to council at the end of 2025. I think it's interesting to know that the public consultation process, if you'd like to have your say in how this document has formed or what we're putting before council, the time to do that is at the Infrastructure and Environment Committee on June 11th, or in advance of that. And that committee will consider it. Anything after that, you have to go through a councillor to get your thoughts across. But we've done a lot of consultation, as you can see from the photos. Throughout the fall, we had a survey out there. We got just under 3,000 respondents. And that'll help us inform the direction of the action plan that we're crafting. So these are sort of the outputs of what we've created at the Environment, Climate, and Forestry Division. But most recently is the sector-based emissions inventory that's on the far right. It's from 2022. And yeah, and then there's some other stuff. There's a consumption-based emissions inventory report, and then our annual report that I from the 2022 to 2025 period. So I encourage you to look at these online. It can show you sort of an understanding of where we're coming from, how we're handling it, and more information for you to understand your role in fighting climate change. So we break it down by sector-based emissions, and this informs how we go about tackling climate change. As you can see from the green part on the chart here, building energy is the greatest emitter of greenhouse gas emissions in Toronto, followed by transportation. And a large chunk of that transportation is from the vehicles you and I own, operate, use day to day, or the buses we take to get from where we need to go to where we need to go. But for the green, the buildings, biggest chunk is how we heat, cool, and power our buildings. So if we can find ways to tighten that up, we'd be making the most significant change. And that could be from investing in a heat pump, so electrically heating and cooling your buildings, your homes, your workplaces, your schools, rather than how we currently tend to do it. So the second greatest emitter is transportation. And we encourage folks to take more sustainable modes of transportation when they commute, or try carpooling if you must drive with other people. And then waste, the majority of waste comes from, emissions comes from methane gases released at the landfill, and the transport of waste as well, and wastewater. So you're probably wondering why I'm showing you 2022 data. It takes a really long time for my data team to crunch this information, which means that in 2026, we'll be releasing 2023. So this was actually just released in December of 2024. So this is very current. The numbers haven't really changed in the last couple of years, which is a bit concerning because we have some very aggressive goals we need to meet. So it does require a lot of behavior change and awareness of the impact we're having on the environment. So I took the two biggest sectors of greenhouse gas emissions production, and that's buildings and transportation. As you can see with buildings, we've broken it down on the different sources of community-based emissions. And we're seeing the most from our homes where we live. And then with transportation emissions, it's a wide range, but the majority is passenger vehicles. And like I said, that's the vehicles that you and I own, the tailpipe emissions that we emit. But it's quite interesting to see where the other emissions, and interestingly, like 3%, a very small amount, comes from aviation and rail and marine related transportation. But you can check this all out. Again, it just came out in December, so it's a very new report. So this is sort of a visualization of our progress. You can see there was a fantastic dip in 2020, and that's because we were all staying at home a lot more. So we weren't producing the same amount of emissions that we are right now. And there's actually been an increase, which is quite concerning. And you can see our 2025 target here, like we've got a lot of work to do. And it's not like if we want to, our 2040 target's way at the bottom here, we can't just coast up here. We have to incrementally deal with our climate, the emissions we create. So it's really, this is sort of the graph that shows you the importance of where we need to go and how aggressively we need to get there, and that it will take time. But the near-term goals are really important, like what we're doing in the next 5 to 10 years. So there's two types of emissions that we measure, and we have reports on both. But sector-based emissions is probably what we lean on the most. It's what we produce within the walls of Toronto, within the city boundaries, from our vehicles, and from the food produced in Toronto or the goods and services we enjoy. Whereas consumption-based emissions is more of a stewardship sort of approach to it. It considers the life cycle of the goods or services that we use and enjoy. So, that could be anything from the car you buy, from when it's produced, where it's produced from, factoring in those emissions. So it's a greater picture of things. But we are measuring both to be accountable for the emissions that we produce. And there are many different areas that we want to tackle, but through the 2030 goals, which is just 5 years away when you think about it, we want to see new buildings be totally net zero and energy efficient. A bit easier than retrofitting buildings, I will say, which is why existing buildings have a lower goal of 50%. It's much harder to retrofit older buildings, and it's more costly. But it means that from that sort of embodied carbon life cycle, we are making better use of the buildings that we have already built, and we're not displacing people from the homes they live in just to create more energy efficient buildings. So retrofitting is a huge challenging piece of the puzzle. And then some other areas, like we want to see electric vehicles over gas and diesel vehicles. We'd like to see people taking more active modes of transportation. We want to see great diversion rates. And we want to see green energy being used. So that could be solar or geothermal or district energy systems. So lots of ways forward. And it's not just on you and me. It's on businesses. It's on organizations. It's on the City of Toronto as a corporation. We have a lot of properties out there. And there's many benefits to climate action that aren't just environment or weather related. We're seeing benefits to people's lives in healthier lifestyles, better living conditions. We're seeing energy efficiency. So through that, you'll see a decreased utility bill if you do pay your utility bills. And if your landlord does, then that should be reflected in the rent you pay. We are seeing just better, happy, healthier lives. And these are guiding principles we use to make our actions in the Transform TO plan. And we don't want to compromise any of this in any of our environmental actions. So it's all about community care and helping the environment as well as the people in Toronto. This infographic I find very clustered, but it does show how everything's tied together. And it's a very good depiction of how reducing greenhouse gas emissions and energy and environmental conservation does benefit, and it is a systemic approach. So as I mentioned before, with reduced energy bills, you're going to see better housing conditions, which will lead to cost savings to the landlord, which will lead to lower rents or condo fees or taxes. And we're going to see healthier residents through that and happier residents. But it is all connected. And there's just different ways of showing that. These are the critical steps to net zero. And this is where I sort of get into the importance of what we can do as residents and what our role is to helping the environment. But we want to show accountability locally and globally by establishing a carbon budget, which we've released a carbon budget now. So that can be one of the documents if you'd like some homework to read up on. We want to see a reduction in reliance on fossil gas or natural gas in buildings and going more electric. And that goes for our vehicles as well. We want to see low carbon or zero emission transportation options, and seeing people use our walking, cycling, or taking public transit more. And we want to see more green energy in our grid. we are going to see an increased demand on electricity, but I trust that Toronto Hydro, they're preparing for it. They're making plans for that increased energy demand. This is a really interesting way of visualizing climate action, adaptation, mitigation, and resilience. Resilience being our goal. We want to have healthy, resilient, happy communities. Adaptation and mitigation are ways we'll get there. So adaptation are measures such as adjusting or adapting to climate change, whereas mitigation is taking measures to reduce our impact. So together, in tandem, we will have more resilient communities. And this is sort of where you come in as a resident of Toronto to see change. Many city initiatives, and this is sort of a great way to understand the different environmental programs of the city, but homes and buildings, these are ways you can, that we're sort of guiding Torontonians to make more energy efficient decisions at their home or schools or work. And you know what? We don't always have the most control over that, depending on where you live or the age of your building. I think transportation is a really inspiring field. We have a lot of opportunity you have a lot of agency as a resident to decide how you're going to travel and the amount of greenhouse gas emissions you release. Waste is everyone's favorite, very in control of what you can do, what you throw out, how many takeout containers you take. And then getting involved is our call to action to you. There's so many ways to get involved. And I'm going to just maybe go to some slides on empowering you as residents. So choose how you get around with a sustainability lens. Walking is the most sustainable mode of transportation. It keeps the community safer. And cycling, followed by cycling, public transit, and then really like shared like carpooling is a great option. It's not on here. And then at the very bottom, take your personal vehicle if you must. And I understand it's an accessibility issue. Some people need to rely on a personal vehicle or very long trips that are very hard to take by public transit. But I encourage you to sort of take this lens of what you can do first, or a combination. Maybe you cycle partway. Like I cycled to the GO train station and then I took the GO train to work. So if you can find a way to integrate more than one method of transportation, that's excellent. And I'll just make a little note, electric mobility is coming. So it's coming, it's here. So in addition to electric vehicles that charge rather than fill up with gas, there's also electric micro mobility. So that could be an e-bike or an e-assist bike. A scooter, strangely, I picked a scooter picture, but they're not actually permitted in Toronto. So they're not legal right now. That might change down the line, but you might see them, but they're not technically allowed in the city of Toronto. Rugari, I'm just checking in. Did you want to have a discussion at any point? I've been babbling on for a very long time.
Yeah, well, but if you still have material, what we could do is we could finish these 40 minutes and we could log in
Yeah,
and have an extra 10 or 15 for questions. Since
sounds good.
you have a lot of stuff to share. Yeah.
Yeah. It's I haven't done a community presentation in a while, but it's just certainly coming.
Oh,
Um, I just have a few more slides. And this is again, call to action, opportunities for you to get involved. Lots of volunteer opportunities and so many within the Environment, Climate, and Forestry Division. So I know Rugari mentioned the Live Green Toronto volunteer program. It's one of my favorites. It's so easy to join. It's low stress, low commitment. But if you wanted to make a lot of it, you could. They offer training to their volunteers on different environmental topics. You get to hear people like me who work at the city talk about their amazing work. We do some really good work at the city, and it's really expansive, from fixing up the city's fleet of vehicles or the snow removal trucks to making sure we have enough trees, and those types of people speak at these volunteer sessions. Solid Waste has a 3R ambassador program, which tries to get, they specifically target multi-residential buildings, so condos, apartment buildings, anything with more than 6 units that has City of Toronto collection, you can become a waste volunteer, a 3R ambassador. The reason why they target that group is unfortunately, they have the worst recycling rates and waste diversion rates in the city. And that's probably because of things like garbage chutes and things that make people a bit lazy when they're recycling, low accountability. So we need these 3R ambassadors to help encourage their neighbors to do the right thing and recycle and help us reduce the waste that's going to landfill. If you're more of like an environmentalist in the form of like nature type stuff, there's the community stewardship program, or there's the tree planting and forest stewardship program. Those are, well, actually, the tree planting one would probably be through my division now. We just gobbled up forestry recently. And then the community stewardship program is through parks and recreation. And I believe through the community stewardship, you're like removing invasive species in parks and you're learning about them through the staff. Oh my goodness, there's so many programs. There's the Neighborhood Climate Action Champions program if you want something more intense than the Live Green volunteers. Pollinate TO offers grants to community members that want to plant pollinator friendly gardens that attract bees, butterflies, and things that help our food grow. And the Climate Action Fund is grants. So there's lots, and that could fund projects you have in your community. So many things. Like I could probably babble on about this for another 20 minutes, but I'll just quickly go over a couple more. So waste related, if that's your thing, Clean Toronto Together is the citywide cleanup. Waste cleanups are a great way to sort of connect with the environment, see the impact we have, negative and positive, negative being the litter, positive being cleaning the litter with your neighbors and community members, friends. It's a very easy, accessible way, but we provide like bags and gloves. You just have to write us. We'll probably put a call out to the community, but it's held in, oh my goodness, March. It's probably coming up real soon. So if you're interested, you can reach out to us at transform@toronto.ca to get more information on this. But it's a great initiative and it's a citywide cleanup. It's a lot of fun. I've already mentioned the Pollinate TO grants, but you can learn more through the pollinator protection strategy. It's a whole other plan. 1 in every 3 bites is because of pollinators. Sorry, 3 bites of food. It's a strange slip, but pollinators are responsible for helping our plants grow. And pollinators are ants, they're bees, they're butterflies. So these creatures are so important to our vitality, and they do a lot for us. So this is a great way of honoring them. And that bee in the middle is Toronto's official bee. And we chose it because it's quite happy and plenty in Toronto. It's not endangered. So you might see that around sometime. It's a good bee. And again, if food's your thing, there's lots of great ways you can give back to the community. You can support local farmers or local-ish farmers. There's lots of gardens, community gardens in the city. You could get your own through the city or through the community. We're all about reducing waste, and that includes food. So there's a few campaigns around there, and then like the local dish and get growing really focus on food literacy and education. So like knowing how to cook and make your own food. And there's some great recipes online there. And that's it. So more information, you can reach out to transform@toronto.ca, and we'd love to connect with you further.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you. So what we can do now is log off and then log in for maybe 10 or less minutes for
Yeah.
some interactive discussion.
Sounds good. Can I proceed to use the same link?
Yes, madam.
Okay, cool.
All right.
Perfect.